Um, the PEAMS element is still required during the submission, as it cannot be left blank. So if districts are wanting to report yes, you need to follow the guidelines, and those are the guidelines that released last October. So they had released a set of guidelines that was kind of a higher threshold for being able to approve that the use of saying a student is joining the military. And then 2 weeks later, then that was when they announced that it was no longer going to count for accountability point. But the information that they released on how you would go about seeing what meets that threshold and what kind of procedures you would need in place to do that are going to be linked here on the word here. So it is a link that'll take you to that information that TEA had put out. And I pointing out that your opinion it really makes a difference, that it hasn't released yet, but it is coming soon. So the educator certification for your review is coming up. So some of the things that is not just a CTE thing, this is an ongoing piece of whenever they make changes to TAC. But one of the areas that's going to be of importance to a lot of you, because I've heard from a lot of you that have had concerns on how this affected what you were doing on who was teaching what. When tech apps got pulled into CTE, the TAC piece of that had not been able to be updated yet. That's a different process, and it takes a significant amount of time. So that means the people that were approved to teach tech apps were no longer necessarily approved to teach the courses now that they've been pulled into CTE. And when some of those courses were merged and realigned, this is the process where some of that may change. So when I will make sure it goes out in newsletters and on social media so that you know when they release that for public comment. But please, once they do, take a look at what is there and make sure that your voice is heard. If there's something on there that doesn't look like you feel it should, or what you need in order for a successful implementation in your own districts. And so you'll want to be very aware of that because it's coming out soon. Regional programs of study. A couple things I wanted to let people know, because I've had some different questions on this. The programs of study that were previously approved, the cosmetology and our drone unmanned flight, they will stay approved. They don't have to be reapproved. They were approved for a period of time, and it varies on different things, but it generally is 5 to 7 years when they're approving something, and it stays there for use. If you are in Region 11, either of those programs of study is available for you to use. Now, the courses that are on any of these, you can always teach and offer a CTE course in your district if it benefits your students. But to offer the full program of study, you need to be offering enough of what's on there for a student to get to completer status. But the way that TEA will determine whether you're doing that or not is when they do those fall snapshot polls and they pull the data and they're looking at the data of your graduates from the year before, and they look at their transcripts and they're seeing what they were able to complete. We did submit an application for the aviation program of study. I was told that they will be releasing who's been approved for those in the first week of February, so we should know soon. And then we are considering applying next fall for geospatial engineering and land surveying. I've had a couple of districts that have shown some interest in that, and I've also had some industry members that have reached out to me since recent UAS meetings, saying that they would very much like to see us do that and would be happy to partner with being the industry side of, writing letters of support and things for us to do that. So if you've never looked at that, it is a regional program of study that's on the TEA website, and it is hot linked here. So you can kind of look and see what that is, and let me know, if that's something that you want to be a piece of working on and planning for. The OMB, Office of Management and Budgets, they had sent out a release on purchase of telecommunications equipment. If you have not seen that, it went out through some of the TEA listservs, but it is something you probably need to look at. So it is hot linked here for you to look at. And if you note, it backdated things, which is for me, a really hard thing to handle, but it is talking about federal funds, and they specifically named Perkins funds as it is used in the purchase of drones, because the FAA has been pushing for this. They don't want drone technology to be created overseas in ways that make it easily hackable, or that information from what's being done with the drones is going to be available to somebody outside of the United States. So if you are somebody, whether you have a full drone program or you're just buying them and using them in different programs in your classrooms, which I know is happening in pretty much every district, please take a look and read through what that release says. And with that, I am going to stop my share because I want to introduce to you Kathy Farrell, as she is a school improvement consultant, and she is amazing. And I'm very happy that she's able to be here with us today. And I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself and take over the screen and share with you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I am in awe of all the faces and people that I see, and thank you for all that you do every day for kids. With everything going on, I appreciate everything that you and teachers and staff are doing every day with our students. I'm Kathy Farrell. I am a campus coach. I work in the continuous improvement, school improvement department. We're actually changing the name over to continuous improvement. And I have a background in curriculum, assessment, accountability, and what I was going to share with you today is something that I've learned over I wouldn't say the hard way. And I'm going to adjust my slides just a little bit today, just from the poll. So thank you, Lisa, for that. And then if you have any in-depth questions that I skipped over too quickly, I'm going to have my information at the end, and don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share in more in depth where I was. What I'm going to share with you at first is in the assessment and accountability piece, I had said for several years, and PEAMS was very separate from us and in another department at the time, that our data was not correct, and it was grossly affecting our accountability. And as I was at a mid-level in the leadership team at the district, and it wasn't exactly being heard because not everyone understands accountability and how PEAMS affects that. And I kept screaming loud enough that eventually we had a new superintendent that said, okay, then, and he saw he was very interested in the numbers. And they said, fine, we're going to move PEAMS under you. So what I'm about to share with you, and I was petrified because really all I had known from PEAMS was, one, I had the accountability background, but two, I also had, been a school administrator, but that doesn't mean I know PEAMS, and I'm going to make that same claim here. I know a lot about PEAMS, and what I'm really going to stress today and kind of work with you on is what systems do you have in place to know that the data is valid? And that's really where we focused on, and the collaboration and the piece that we had to bring departments, and our CTE was one of the departments that we brought into that, as well as our ESL, bilingual, and SPED. Because as you know, those students hit you in multiple places, and sometimes if that data is not right, it skews up everything. And so after doing this, just so you know why I'm passionate about it, we raised our accountability letter score 1 grade. And I'm not saying that teaching when learning was not a part of that, but I can tell you that our data had significant errors in it that grossly affected not only our high school, but the district level as well. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and if somebody would give me a thumbs up that the right screen was shared, that would be awesome. Can you see? Thank you, Lisa. And I am actually gonna go ahead and move forward. The first question I had, you kind of already answered in your poll, and let's see if it'll move, is that I was gonna have you put in the chat, and it looks like it's a muck. So let's see if we can straighten that out any. It may not let me do it unless there it goes. In what ways does PEAMS affect your data? PEAMS data affect your school or district? And several of you said that, and so I'm going to move to the next one, and we're just going to combine it a little bit. Oh, it looks like I took the other one out. So several of you said you understand PEAMS data. So just real quickly, if you'll put in the chat, and Lisa, I'm going to try to monitor the chat, but if you see it, something that I missed, please let me know. Could you let me know what your thoughts are about what your PEAMS data affects? just real quickly, we won't take too much time on it. Accountability and funding, thank you. Absolutely, what else? Everything. I thank you, Amy. It really does touch absolutely everything. CCMR. So we're going to go through these slides and real quickly. And if you, hopefully you'll learn something today. And if you can teach this, then hats off to you. And you learned quicker than I did as a school administrator. This just tells you what it's called. I never realized for the longest time what PEIMS was, and this is my interpretation of what PEIMS is. It's just data everywhere, and it truly is the data that we send up to TEA. And I love this quote. It's called, and I tweaked it just a little bit, but I said, if you have data integrity, nothing else matters. And if you don't have data integrity, nothing else matters as well. For those of you who looked and typed in the box, it affects your accountability, it affects your your financial pieces, but it also affects your monies and dollars. And I was waiting for somebody to put that in the chat. Immensely. What's taken away, what's given. That's where all your teacher information goes, where your staff information goes. It's all the information that we send up and back to TEA goes through PEIMS. And it literally affects every department at the district level. And when PEIMS was under me and we had to do those reports, I'll share with you in a bit how we made sure that those reports were correct before we send them up to the superintendent. So it just says ensuring data integrity, accurate data is fundamental to accountability ratings. The system depends on the responsible collection and submission of assessments, the TSDS PEIMS information by school districts and charters. And the responsibility for the accuracy and quality of the data is used to determine the ratings. And the one that's underlined and highlighted, I get asked that usually every year by a superintendent or assistant superintendent that wants to know if, we entered something wrong, can we appeal based on that? And the answer is no, because of the first word, we. If we enter incorrect data, it is our boo-boo, not TEA's, and they are not going to allow you to appeal based on an error from the district. And then I put up there that, of course, in 2020, we have the not rate declared status, and I'm not even going to touch on accountability today because it's a hot mess, but, that'll ride for another year, and that's a whole nother conversation. But so what I'm going to ask you for just a moment to do is I'm going to ask you just to reflect from the CTE department, what systems, and hopefully you're collaborating with other departments, and if you're not, just think about CTE, but what systems do you have in place to ensure that your data, your CTE data across the district, across the schools, if you have one high school, it may be a little bit different, but how do you know that the data that is entered is correct and accurate? And I'm going to ask you on two levels. I'm going to ask you about the campus level, and then I'm going to ask you about the district level. So what systems do you have in place to ensure data integrity across the district? So choose whichever role. In my case, I chose to do both because I'll tell you what happened. When and it didn't come from me, I'm not near as smart as the people in the buildings. One of my principals, when we were in a testing, we'd have the long line at that time and we'd check off the programs, the kids, who was in what before we entered in their answer document. And one of the principals said, we had so many changes. She said, can we do this beforehand? And I'm like, yes. So the next year when they moved PEIMS under me to kind of look at that data and get systems in place, that's exactly what we did. We brought in every department leader at the district, director of CTE, EL, SPED, everybody came in. And we audited campus by campus some of their systems. And what became very obvious is it was a hot mess. I would ask, when we had somebody in, it's like, who is coding your at-risk students? Or who is doing this? And everyone was pointing to someone different in the room. The counselors would say it was this person would say it was the counselors would say it was the registrar. And we realized very quickly as leaders in the district, our systems were off. So think about your systems and how do you make sure that that's quality? And I usually ask people to submit that in this, but I'm going to move forward and just kind of challenge your thinking on that. So if you are new to PEAMS, and I will show this very quickly to you, if you're some that know all of it, just to kind of be aware. This is, of course, the fall submission and what goes in it. I'm still amazed sometimes that people still feel like the small snapshot date is the date that all the data goes up and you can't change it after that. That's still a perception that they have, which it's a date and it's an important date, and we want our data to be as correct as it can be by then. But there, of course, in the next submission, you can update that, and that's with the mid-year submission. And this just shows you some of the things. And if you look at the first one, it's mainly looking at their school start. It's looking at all of your IDs. It's looking at student data. And when you go to the mid-year, that's any kind of corrections or anything that you have. And then submission 3, when you look at this one, it includes the year-long student attendance, the flexible, the regular and flexible attendance, it's course completions, and that's where you want to make sure that your students and you have what you need there. Discipline actions, student restraints. If you have ever been an AP or those type of things, we've dealt with those things. And this is where your teacher and your class assignments. And I would always have to work very closely with our CFO and those people to make sure that this data was correct. Submission 4, of course, is your extended year, which is your special ed services, your ESY, your bilingual ESL summer school. And then, of course, only LEAs that offer one of those programs is required to report that. This is something, and Mary Morgan is our PEAMS person here at the district. And so I have to give her a very good shout out. Because this is her little roadmap and I love it. I'm a very visual person. So if this helps you, then I'll be happy to share that with you as well. But it just talks about what's due, what's kind of when. And for me as an administrator, I didn't know we had 4 things. And I'm going to be honest, I thought the fall snapshot was it. So I had a huge curve when I went to work with the PEAMS people. And of course, here's the handbook and all the pieces that go into that. You've got your student attendance, you've got your foundational programs and eligibility, your funding implementation, your special ed, your document requires. You've also got on the next page, it really goes in depth, about the different sections that are in the handbook. And really, you really get a sense of all the different programs that it touches when you look at this list and group. And it really does. And the person that said all of them is exactly right. So I want to think about just for a moment accountability. I have to put that hat back on from time to time because that's what really caught my eye when we got our ratings. I'm like, this just doesn't match the numbers that we've seen all year. So what drives your economically disadvantaged numbers, and how is that information gathered? And you all are at the district level, but I want you to think at the elementary, middle school, and high school. And what I ask principals and district people when they talk about, especially at risk, and how do you know it's accurate? And I ask them to put it in the comments box. But what I traditionally find out is that elementary has really good numbers. Because, and I know a lot of people have gone to online registration, which is great, but elementary parents, you gotta love them. They are great about filling everything out and getting paperwork back for the most part. And they want the free and reduced lunch, which is where that number comes from. So I kind of gave that clue away. Where we struggled, and I'm just gonna share our pain point, was at the middle school and especially our high school levels. High school students, I love them. They have their own uniqueness and gifts, but trying to get some of that paperwork or them to fill out all of the forms online was very difficult. And if you look at why that's important, I'm going to show the next slide. This is talking about domain 2, or for the relative performance. When you look at part, the relative performance, which is the part, the second part, that piece, because you either have student progress or you have relative performance. But when you look at relative performance, if you look up here, the student achievement domain is evaluated based on the fall snapshot, which is why those numbers are so important, but it's also because of the percentage of eco-disc. And it starts comparing you with campuses that are like that. So for instance, when I looked at the high school that I was working with, their eco-disc was reporting like in the 60-something%. I knew that was incorrect because we were close to 80% EcoDisc. And what that did was it threw him into a different group to be compared against. It also threw him into another group here in just a minute that was really important that kind of hurt us. So this just shows you that what is kind of collected there and the mythology for it. But if you look at it over several things, it can affect your growth in the relative performance, which is that part B in domain 2.
Can I share where this is going to heavily affect in CTE? So MOA is something that everybody is, if you receive a penny of federal funds in your district, then you are at risk for being tagged for methods of administration. They are looking at your CTE data as it is applied to your CTE, the students that are in your CTE programs against your sub-pops that are in the entire high school, because it's done by high school, not by district. And if your sub-pops are skewed, then that can skew what all of that data looks like. And so you may, if it's, you're only showing that you have 60% EcoDisc, because it compares it against, internally against your things, it also then compares you against statewide. And so when they look at your different sub-pops, and EcoDisc is just one of the sub-pops they look at, they're looking at all of those different sub-pops that exist. So every one of those entities has to be done correctly. And so you may not be the person that is making sure that that is coded correctly, but it still may come back and affect you in your department, because when they look at how your students are doing comparatively, if your data for who are those students is incorrect, then that changes what your performance looks like.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So if the demographic data is changed on the STAR answer document prior to scoring, it does override the TSDS, but it could affect your funding and those type of things. So somebody had once pointed out, well, the STAR answer document, it will change that, and that's correct. The data from the STAR answer document is used to classify students by that closing the gaps group. But here's another piece that, if you go back into, and I know especially the 2019, and you can see this in your closing the gaps domain. But in this domain, when you're looking, especially for elementary and middle school, and it's the same for high schools, so I just pulled one of the slides, but part B comes straight from the fall submission. But in domain 3, that's when the answer documents could change it. But as you can see, and this is really a lot what we've been talking about, it touches every student group that you have. And one of our other pieces that we realized was our EL and our CTE numbers were not correct. And we also had an issue with our students that had gotten a 2-year degree. And one of the pieces that popped out to me was the principal and his staff were excited because we had like, I don't know, 30 students that graduated with a 2-year degree that should have counted in accountability. But when I looked at their data over their data set, when you get that from TEA, they got credit for 0. And when I talked to the principal about that, it probably would have made the difference from him because he was on the line in a letter score for his campus. And what it was is he had, on the high school department, I think he had 4 different PEIMS people. And like the CTE would have one, the SPED people would have one, the special piece that had the 2-year degree had one, and then there was one for all students. And what we realized is not even the 4 of them were totally calibrated on when and what to code because of different situations. So we had to really look at what are our systems in place and how do we make sure that everything is checked. It also can affect your distinctions in your comparison groups. And the comparison groups was the other group I was talking about when you look at for those distinctions. If you're EcoDisc, and if you look right here, when they talk about the methodology for setting those up, here's the they assign each campus to a unique comparison group for the other campus that closely match that campus based on, and here's the 7 things today, I always say that, or at least as we know it, that puts you in that comparison group, so that for those distinction levels that we all want to achieve and covet. But they're the grade level served, the campus size, but then it goes down to, in that percentage of economically disadvantaged, the percentage of ELs, your mobility rate, the students in special ed, and the percentage enrolled in an early college high school. And we had that as well. So I always highlight at least one, but several of these, if those numbers are off, it also skews your comparison group for those distinctions as well. So I'm going to go back, and this is the question we really started with, and that's when all the finger pointing began. And what I realized is we had to start asking our principals and our directors, who is coding and entering their data for SPED? Who's doing that? For a CTE, who's doing that? And how do you know that that data is correct? And these were some of the things that we were looking at. Was it the counselor? Was it the registrar? Was it a lead teacher that you had? Who's responsible for coding and entering it at each campus? Sometimes for SPED, it was a lead teacher at the campus level. Is it the same person? These are the questions I'm going to challenge you. Is it the same person with you being at the district level for CTE? Is it the same person at all the campuses across the district? And are there procedures and systems in place at all levels to ensure the accuracy? If you have more than one high school, or how the coding is at each campus, and I'm just going to give an example with when I went back to the at-risk, the elementary were using a form that was pretty update on some were elementaries were using some forms that were probably 10 years old. We're not even sure where they came from. The information didn't ask the same things. And so there was, and then when we asked the elementary, they'd say, well, this person's coding. Well, when the secondary, the middle school and high school came in, they had different forms, and they would say a different person was coding. So even if we tried to train, the people that we were pulling in weren't necessarily even the same across the campuses, much less across the district. And I'm not saying that they all had to be, but there had to be consistencies within the elementary, middle school, and high school, so that we could make sure that that training and the accuracy to ensure that data was there. So I'm going to ask you to kind of think about that in your group, and who's responsible for doing that, and how do you know? And then the next question that's very important is once somebody enters it, and I challenge you to know who that is the next question is, who's responsible for ensuring the accuracy of the data at the campus level? Is it the principal? Is it the counselor? Is it the assistant principal? Is it a lead teacher? And is it the same person again across those campuses who are checking it? I can say my first year as a principal, I think I looked up at people and said, okay, is this correct? And no one does that anymore, and I don't do that anymore. And then as I realized, okay, it is my job to make sure that when I sign my name here, before it goes up to the next level, and the next level to the superintendent finally has to sign off on it before it's entered into, before it's given to the state, I would actually bring in my SPED lead teacher and have her verify that all those SPED students were coded the right code. I would bring in my ESL person. And I challenge you to think about who, whether it's at the principal level, and talk to your principals about that. Who is verifying that that's data is correct, and how do they know? Because sometimes waiting till the end of the year when kids are testing or moving in and out of different classes is the wrong time to find that. We want to have that data as clean as we can, going up at snapshot date, and at the latest have it reviewed by that second resubmission date.
Kathy, can I share them?
Yep.
For CTE, you are no longer personally coding whether a student is a CTE student. The 0, 1s, and 2s went away, and that's being auto-coded. But there are still pieces of this that are controlled. So if you manage your CTE teachers, if you're on a 6 weeks or however you're born on, every 6 weeks, your teachers get that little report for attendance, and they sign their name to it. And how many of them actually look at it? Do they just pull it out of the thing, write their name on it, stick it back to whoever it needs to go to, and never check that that's right? Well, in any year, that's a big deal, because that can affect your funding. If all of a sudden kids were being marked absent that were actually present in class, that's your CTE weighted funding that's not getting coded. But this year, with kids who are on remote and blended, and kids who are coming in and going back out and quarantined and different things, those reports, I'm sure, are way more complicated. And there is value in making sure the teachers know what those should look like and are spending some time and making sure they're accurate, because you can offer something all day long, but if the state doesn't believe there are butts in seats, that there is not a kid sitting getting that course, then you don't get the weighted funding for it, because that funding comes tied to that attendance. So this isn't always just at a high level that, you know, you're talking about the directors needing to do this. This goes all the way down to the teacher level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what, and I think you'll see when I share in just a moment, what we realized was a lot of our principals, you know, they didn't realize the impact that some of it was having, and their teachers didn't realize the impact of what they were submitting and how it did that. And what we realized, and I'm just going to share one, is, for instance, on one of our programs, the way we were entering and exiting wasn't necessarily consistent across all things. And it went back to finances, because some of the students should have been exited and some of them should have been tested in a different way. And we, you know, we had to look at our funding as to if we had, you know, 5 kids or that over so many years had been in a program and either had not been coded or had been coded when they really should have been exited, then it really affects your funding. And we were looking at whether we were going to actually have to pay funds back. And I don't want anyone ever to be in that boat. And I don't want anyone ever to miss funds that they should have because they didn't have the right data. And that's exactly right. Thank you for that. So, and then the other piece is really just documenting the audit documentation, regardless of where any of those records are stored. You know, they must be readily available for audited by the Financial Compliance Division of TEA, and they have the authority to examine attendance records for any year in which your district is required to maintain records. And if the auditors detect errors, TEA will assess and adjust to subsequent allocations of state funds, or require your district to refund the total amount of the adjustment when the audit is finalized. An incomplete or inaccurate data will result in attendance not being allowed. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. And then what we really looked at next is what does the district level auditing look like? And that's when I had the directors together. And what we realized is, under the old format, really, we had a PEIMS person who was trusting that the campus did it, and that was going straight to the superintendent. So we put some systems in place where every director signed off and looked at their piece before we sent it up to the superintendent. And that way, if there was an issue with one of the departments, and because even with having PEIMS under me, I don't know SPED bilingual CTE. I know enough to be dangerous, and I'm thankful for the people that know much more about that than me. I don't know whether their data is right, and I don't want to be the person that's accountable for that. So I made sure that each director signed off on that, and so that when we went up to the superintendent for the first few times, I went up with our PEIMS department and he signed off. I could look him in the eyes and know that the best of our knowledge, that data was accurate and correct. So that's what I'm going to ask you to think about. And how many, and then the next thing we had to figure out is we wanted to audit our process. If we had, how do you audit and how many times a year do you audit? And I would challenge you to pull different departments together. Whoops, I think did it just go off? Sorry, I do not know what happened. There we go. Talk to your bilingual ESL, your SPED, your PEIMS people, your assessment and accountability. And you should get together from time to time and have conversations. What we found out when they put PEIMS under me, and she was about 2 doors down from me when they moved PEIMS under me, is, you know, we holler out a lot. We were in a place where we were quite controlled and we would have issues. But what I found really quickly in assessment and accountability is the PEIMS person would pipe in and say, wait, I can pull a report to help with that. Or wait, there's a way that we can do that faster and easier than that. And I started going to all of the PEIMS meetings with our campus personnel as well. And what we found out was they were thankful to understand and realize the impact that they had on our accountability and funding. They had no idea, and they had never been included in those conversations. And so I would challenge you to ask and to reach out and start having conversations and include your PEAMS people in the departments, and make sure that your systems are accurate and that you have systems to support one another and to support your data. This is just a checklist because we wanted to make sure, if you're not sure about how to go through and make a checklist, this is from Mary Morgan, of course, but it just shows you the fall snapshot reports that you can pull. These are the reports that we pulled out of the district, and I had people sign off on. My CFO had to sign a report about financial, absolutely, because he's responsible for that, not me. My HR director had to do that, absolutely, because I wanted to make sure those things were correct, and I do not understand any of the codes, so we did make sure that was going on. But you can almost see by the headings if that's something that you need to look through and look over, you know, who's going to make sure that all of these things on this that go up to the superintendent and to TEA are correct. So these are just reports that are pulled every 6 weeks period. They all have to add up to the summary report. And this just shows who's responsible for what. I know that you're at the district level, so I'm flipping pretty quickly through here. But the district summary report should be generated each week, and the person reviewing the report should do and reviewed by the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, and the person reviewing the report should do these things. And scrutinize regular attendance totals and special program attendance based on approximate membership, investigate the data tools, you know, compare current year totals to prior year totals. And I'm going to push back here a little bit. I know that PEAMS people are not responsible for coding. I get that. And I understand that. But what I challenged our PEAMS people was, if you see that all of a sudden I had, let's say I had 1,000 kids on a campus and an EL program last year or coded as EL, and this year I have 200. Well, something's amok. And I'm not asking you to check whether they're coded right. I'm asking you to say to me, okay, last year we had 1,000, this year we had 200, 250, whatever. If there is a change in the number, just bring it to my attention and let me have that conversation. And that was a new idea for our PEAMS people. They weren't used to running that and having that check. And you probably have a PEAMS person that's doing that. We just had somebody new and we didn't have systems. So we put systems in place and we all learned together. And then one of the things I'm going to ask you is there consistency in the forms across the district that collect your data? Or does each campus create their own? And think about how that either makes your life easier or puts barriers up for you and your staff. And then the second piece of that is, how often are those forms updated? If people move in and out of different campus positions, sometimes they don't even know where to find those things. And are they online and are easy for updating and access? And that was one of the keys that we found when we did ours. CTE had a program, SPED had a program, EL had a program, and they all had different places that they had to put different documents. And so we tried and combined them into one umbrella that was easy for everybody to go to and access. And if we needed to update a piece of the form, then we could do that very quickly. And we knew that people could see that, and it was all in one place. The word live binder got to be a really bad name where we were, because one department had a live binder and you couldn't do anything without going to that live binder. But that live binder it had so much in it, you couldn't find anything. And then the other department had something in, I don't know, let's say Nearpod or whatever. But what we found is there were so many different platforms that we were asking our people to use that there was not easy access. So most of the time they just didn't even do it. They just used a form that they had nearby that would probably an older form.
A simple recommendation there is make sure that your forms have a date on the bottom of them.
Absolutely.
So people always, so whatever the most current one is, it's got that new date on it, updated January 2021, so that you can always be sure that somebody's using the most current.
So let's think about CTE a little bit, and I'm going to lean on Lisa here for this one as well. But as well, House Bill 3, of course, expanded eligibility for the CTE allotment to include students in grades 7 and 8, which was previously limited to students in the career and tech education for disability courses. And then I think on this slide, I've made a little note, but you can see that the TA has interpretation for this is that only 7th and 8th grade CTE courses count for that high school credit will receive that weighted funding. Lisa, did I say that right?
Yes. So, we got real excited. Everybody let out a cheer when we saw the information come out of the legislator, and we thought we were going to be able to get that weighted funding for all our middle school courses, but that was not the interpretation when it filtered down through TEA. And also the reference to CTED. If you look at the most current, the 2020, 2021 SAAH, your student attendance counting handbook, and you go to where CTED is, it has just got lines all through it. CTED does not exist anymore. It is gone. And so, and there was a process for that to be removed. It has been gone for a while, but it still lived on pieces of published documents, and they've been working their way through cleaning that up. And so, you have to keep going back to, you think that what's in those things, but every time they update it, and the updated 2020, 2021 version of that, it didn't release till December. And so even though the school year started in August, because they were still working on getting things fixed in it, you need to be always going and looking at what is the most current version, because stuff will change on you, even the stuff that you think and that you've known for a long time.
So I'm just going to ask you to go back, like what we were talking about at the beginning of the this training is what additional systems might need to be in place, either at your campuses or even at the district level, to ensure that your data is right for not only the 2021 school year, but for the 21-22 school year. And who will you partner with across your campus and the district to make that happen? I've got my information on here. I know this was quick. There's my email to reach out to me. There's my phone number here at the office. Again, if it's a specific PEAMS piece, and I don't know why Mary's email is way down here, but hers is mmorgan@ESC Region 11. I will fix that on the slides. And then of course, Lisa is the CTE guru as well. We are here to help and assist you, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I will send this slide deck to Lisa so that she can share it out as well. But if I can help you in any way with your continuous improvement efforts, and if my path down the PEAMS road can help you as well, I'm happy to share a little bit more. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Kathy, we've got some messages that have come into the chat. Trina, I'm not positive if Kathy will be able to answer this. That will be answered maybe answered a little bit this afternoon in our meeting, but she's asking exactly where in Texas. So not everybody on here uses Texas. We have people that use a lot of different student information systems. And so our PEAMS people are specialists in different systems, but exactly where the student certifications. So do you know exactly where they put the IBCs in Texas?
I do not. I don't mind, reaching out, and Mary Morgan may be a better person that knows that.
Yes.
I am not the TSD. I'm not the systems of how those things go in. I'm more of a knowledge of systems so that we make sure that the data that's put in is kind of correct. There's a question on here that do I do audits for districts? Wow. I have not been asked to do that, but I certainly don't. If that's a need that you have, I don't mind going forward and asking if that's something that we can provide. We are here to help and assist in that. And since I've been through it, not only with TEA auditing us, but with us auditing others, I can certainly help bring that in, and we can have others here to help as well.
And when it comes to the world of CTE, Kathy and I are partnering together to kind of try some things out that kind of are going along that lines, and may be able to roll some of that out a little bit more large scale. We're in the process of tweaking that with some sample districts, and are kind of excited to see, because what I found was I had some districts that invited me in, and I went and sat and met with them. And we quickly found some things when I started to ask questions on who does this and how is this handled and where does this come from, they had to keep bringing more people into the room. And once we got everybody at the table, we had counselors, we had PEAMS, we had principals, we had central office people, we all of a sudden had conversations where they realized some of what she pointed out. I didn't know what somebody else did. I thought they did that. They thought I did that. So there was not always the checks and balances that people thought were in place. And there were people that had some correct knowledge, but it wasn't shared with the people that were doing the work. And so we fairly quickly, in a matter of a few hours sit down, came across enough things that they will have been able to clean up and recoup very significant amounts of funding because of stuff that was not being done correctly. And some things as simple as, it isn't the course that needs to be turned on for weighted funding. It is the sections within the course that is what's tied to your weighted funding. So if nobody turns those on, you may be thinking you're getting weighted funding and you don't get any weighted funding for those courses. And so, we're looking at kind of putting together a system for that so that we'll be able to help people who have a need for that.
And I've got to run to a 10 o'clock TEA, but you have my information, and I just want to thank y'all so much for having me today.
Thank you very much, Kathy. We appreciate you. And I'm getting some messages are coming in the groups. Some are coming in. Okay, so Mary said the IBCs are in your grad plan for Texas. I know Skyward better than I know Texas. So I always, before I answer anything on Texas, I always check with our PEAMS people because it is definitely not my forte. But our PEAMS people, and I will be able to, I will schedule them again. I've had them come to some of our CTE meetings before. I can ask Mary to come again in the future for I will do one of our CTE coffee and conversations, which are very interactive, and let her share a little bit, and then let them be able to answer some of your very specific questions on things. I can have both Mary and Lynn from our PEAMS department because they're fabulous, and they are experts in different parts of it. Lynn supports certain things that are statewide, and then Mary is our technical assistance guru when it comes to that, so that we can make sure if you do have questions that those are answered for you. What I want to do is give you about 5 minutes to take a quick break. So if somebody needs to, grab a phone call, grab a cup of coffee, run to the restroom. And then Bill Webb is here, and I'll be keying up Bill's PowerPoint, and so that we can share that with you. So it is 10 o'clock my time. So at 10:05, we will start back up again. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off and put on the screen that we're on break briefly.
Lisa, you're not muted, just in case you say something while you're on break.
Thank you, Tammy.
Hey, Lisa, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. I had to exit out because sometimes for some reason when I put myself on mute and then I try to unmute, it kicks me out of the system. I wanted to, so I've met with the Navy recently, and they are trying to do a Navy recruiting for Region 10, Region 11 area, February 22nd through the 26th. So I just wanted to let you know, I'm going to forward you some information so that maybe you can send it out, to some people that might be interested. But I just thought this was a great kind of opportunity to just kind of throw it out there for the CTE folks. But I've set them up to come out on the 23rd. And so they actually have their simulators in their semis. And so that's the week that the semis are here with like the flight simulator and then the ship simulator. So they're looking for schools that they can come in and bring those, for the kids to try out, but then to also talk to the school districts about what the Navy has to offer for them. And so I met with them on Monday for about 2 hours. And it was very interesting just from our conversation about how these individuals got started in the Navy. One was actually a cosmetologist and was actually the barber on the ship. And I had no idea that they had a full barber shop. So just little things like that I thought were kind of interesting, but I'll definitely send you the information. But they're looking for schools again from that week, the 22nd through the 26th. And so, I just thought it was kind of a great opportunity for them to come and speak if, schools are looking for that. They did say they have run into a lot of issues where school districts are not wanting, visitors. So we're going to have them do their presentations outside. So like kids can be outside and stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to pass that on.
Wonderful. Thank you. If you send me that, if you're able to send that to me today, when I send my follow-up email, I can include some information on the follow-up email to this presentation.
Okay. I'll send it over. He actually just sent me an update with some stuff.
All right. Well, I have that we've gone to past 10:05. So we're going to get ready to move on. I want to introduce you to Bill Webb. He is the president and CEO of Associated Industries of Texas, and he'll tell you a little bit more about what that is and his information. But I like to always have anybody that presents their main contact information on our primary slide deck. I will also post his slide deck with our presentation information on our CTE leadership page on the ESC11 CTE website. But and I'm going to go ahead and take down my PowerPoint and switch to his. Let's see. There we go. Escape that one. Slideshow. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead, Bill, and let you take over talking, and I will be your assistant to run through the PowerPoint for you.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate it. Hello, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you for what you do for our school district. My wife is in admin at Carroll ISD. I know Gina Petty's on this call. Go Dragons. So I just want to thank you for what you do. I know it's been a very challenging time. We've lived it. I've got 2 kids in Carroll Senior High and one that's graduated and is at A&M. So I know what you do has been a challenge. It's always appreciated, but it's more greatly appreciated this year. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to try to be brief. Probably 10 months ago now, 11 months ago, when we didn't really understand what COVID was, I was approached by several businesses in the state of Texas who depend on skilled trades workers to help their business succeed, quite literally. And I, as a point of background, come out of the trucking industry. For 10 years, I was head of the Trucking Association in the state of Texas. And I can tell you for 30 years now, we've faced a driver shortage in the trucking industry. A lot of people wind up getting trained in VOTEC schools, but then they never actually, get a job and drive a truck. And it's not an easy job. It is a well-paying job. So my original perspective came out of the trucking industry. When these guys approached me, they were in the home building business, a couple of others, one technicians in the auto and truck industry. And they said, we're concerned about the future. We're concerned where we're going to find our workers in the future. And we'd like to have a statewide effort that's focused on nothing but that. So I did some research. There are obviously some associations across the state of Texas who have this as a part of their effort, but nobody gets up every day saying, how do we get more young people into skilled trades careers in the state of Texas? So we formed an association, and I am the head of that association. I'm based out of South Lake, but we're a statewide association. And if you can go to the next slide, Lisa, I'm not going to read through these. I don't think these numbers would be surprises to most of you, but the couple of things that I would say as high points, the bottom line is we're losing skilled trades workers faster than we're gaining them and making them. For every one that we introduce into a skilled trades profession, we're losing 3. As a matter of fact, we're to the point, our average age is in the 50s, and we're to the point that the average age is growing faster than chronological time is. So in 2 years ago, we don't have the numbers for this past year, but 2 years ago, our average age grew by 2.6 years in 1 year. So that's not a good sign. So our focus is to do a couple of things, and I'm going to get into that specifically, but as it relates to what the issues are, our focus is about trying to change the perception of these careers and these jobs in the state of Texas. For years, skilled trades jobs were considered, really blue collar jobs, and they simply aren't anymore. As many of you know, the opportunity for earnings is very substantial, much quicker. I'll tell a quick story. I have a son who's a junior at A&M. He's studying business. He's a South Lake Carroll graduate. He came home over Thanksgiving and was out in the driveway as usual. When he comes home, we don't talk to him that much. So he's out in the driveway, and I go out there, and of all things, he's welding something. And I said, where did this come from? And he's working part-time on a ranch in College Station. He said, well, I learned how to weld since I was home, in August. And I was quite impressed, and it just hit me. And I said to him, I sent you to college for a college degree, and you came back with a welding certificate. And I'm not sure which one's more important. And at the end of the day, I think that's where we are. College is obviously a pathway for a lot of young people, but there are also a lot where a skilled trade career is a perfectly good path. And part of what we want to do is help tell that story. So if we can go to the next slide. Again, you can read these. I don't need to read them for you, but I just want to say a couple things. Number one, this is not COVID related and has nothing to do with COVID. This has been an issue for 20 years in our state. And while COVID may have changed the equation in some industries over the past year, this will be a problem, an issue long-term. And a lot of it's about perception. And it's not about the exact number of jobs that are open. Some industries have not slowed down at all. Others have. So the timing is unique on creating this association, but the issue is really timeless. And we're not going to solve it overnight. And our hope is that as we begin to recover from the effects of COVID, that we can develop a long-term sustaining program that will help us attract people into these jobs. So if we can go to the next slide. again, one of the things that we know is that there are associations, there are obviously school districts that are focused on this issue. But what we saw lacking and are attempting to fill is that bridge between employers in the state of Texas who want to hire and train their people and the school districts who have the opportunity to shape those futures. So we will, I guess, wind up being political because you can't do much of anything these days without getting into the politics of it. But really our goal is to be that bridge. Our members will be the employers in the state of Texas who depend on skilled workers. Our stakeholders, for lack of a better term, will be the school districts that have direct access and influence on those young people. So I was directed to Lisa, and it was one of the best things that's happened since we started this. That's only been a couple of months ago. She told me about this group, about this meeting, and invited me to be a part of it. And it's really important because we can't build this effort one company at a time, one school district at a time. It's just, there's not enough bandwidth for that. So to be able to address you as a group and today to simply let you know what we're trying to accomplish, and then hopefully the opportunity that comes up to work with some of you directly and make some of these things happen. So if we can go to the next slide. So we are a nonprofit trade association. We were established in November. As I started by saying, there was a small group of Texas businessmen who came to me from the very beginning. Our primary members are employers of skilled trades workers across all industries in the state of Texas. We also will have as members colleges, VOTEC schools, and other educational providers, including hopefully school districts and those associated with the school world, other industry associations like the builders associations, manufacturers, and then the suppliers who support the Texas trade industries. And really our effort is about changing the narrative, taking the stigma off some of these jobs in Texas. Next slide, please. So here's the meat of my entire conversation. We want to start with two very specific tools that we'd like to put out there. We'd like to work with you to develop a virtual toolbox that we can send to high school counselors and even middle school and junior high counselors that provide what you need, to some extent what we think you need, but more importantly, what you need to be able to communicate the opportunities that exist in skilled trades careers in Texas. We don't know what that toolbox is going to look like. We've begun to have conversations with people like Lisa and others, but we hope to broaden that conversation because we want to provide a toolbox that will be helpful to school counselors. And look, we know this may not be perfect for every school district. I'm not naive, but we also think there are young people in every school district that this could apply to. You all have, but counselors have a lot on their plates. We all know that. And our job is to not make it more complicated, but to make it simpler. So number one is that virtual toolbox for counselors. Probably one of the things that we're most excited about, and we were just hearing a conversation in the break about the Navy mobile unit. We're developing a mobile technology unit that we can take to school campuses. Back when I ran the Trucking Association, we worked with the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Texas Department of Transportation and developed a mobile truck driver simulator that we took around to school districts. We took it to the U.S. Capitol, all over. And it was a big hit, and you could actually sit in the seat and drive a truck. If you had a wreck, it knocked you out of your seat kind of type thing. It was full motion, and it was really more for safety, but we used it for PR training as well. We want to develop a mobile unit in a full 53-foot trailer that has units inside it that using virtual reality technology that will allow a student to come in there and if he wants or she wants to learn to weld, They can put the Oculus goggles on and weld something. If they want to take an engine apart, they can do that. If they want to drive heavy equipment, if they want to do something with robotics, we want to put that in their hands and then give them the tools that if they're interested, how to follow up on that interest and or how to communicate that back to their school counselors. There is a TV show that is out of San Antonio called Cruising Kitchens. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it. It's fairly new, but it's on the Discovery Network. And Cameron, the host of that show, their business is building these mobile units like this, mostly in the food industry, but it's become a very popular show. And so we're partnering with them to build this mobile unit, and it's going to be the subject of their show. So we're excited about, sort of the PR side of that. We're also working with Mike Rowe, who is another TV personality who is very passionate about this issue. And he's going to be a bit of a spokesman for us. And then through a meeting I've already had with Lisa and some of her peers, we've been given a couple of other names. So our hope is that not only do we bring tools to the table to influence the young people, but obviously we have to get to their parents and convince them of the importance of this. So hopefully using the micros and the Cameron and some of those guys can help us do that. So ultimately at the end of the day, our goal is to not only be that bridge, but also to be a unified voice for skilled trades, jobs, careers in Texas. And we can't do that without the schools and the school districts and the service centers and everyone that's a stakeholder in this, because you have the frontline connection to these employees. Next slide. So all I would tell you is I could talk about this for hours and we had a great call yesterday with an employer out of Fort Worth. They're actually based out of Amarillo Bruckner Truck Centers, and they have locations all over the state of Texas. And they are actively looking for high school graduates that they can take and put into their apprentice program to be technicians, and they will train them. If they want to go to a career or tech school, they can facilitate that. But the truth is, a lot of these young people that go off to career and tech schools, when they come back into a job, they almost have to be untrained. So a lot of these companies would rather get these kids straight out of high school and work with them. So part of what we want to do is build that specific bridge between school districts and companies like Bruckner, who are looking to attract these young people and train them from scratch. So I'd be glad to answer any questions. And again, I could talk about this for hours and won't. I'm very passionate about it, but I simply provide my contact information. And if you would like to discuss it, if you'd like to be more in depth, if you'd like for, to me to work, talk with your school, somewhere in your district specifically, I'm more than willing and happy to do that. And then I can get much deeper into what we could potentially do. But I also want to be honest and tell you that we're still early in this effort. We have the support from the industry level. We have the support at the government level. And now with Lisa's help, I believe we have the support at the school district level. But this only works if we get engaged and make the numbers work. And by making the numbers work, it's really simple. We have to increase the number of people coming into skilled trades positions and careers in Texas. And then the last thing I would say, it's kind of hard to have this conversation with a 17-year-old or a 12-year-old or an 18-year-old even, but we also think this is a great path to owning your own business, which is absolutely the backbone of our Texas economy. I told you I live in South Lake. I bet twice a week on Facebook, something pops up. I need somebody to work on our air conditioner and I can't find anybody. I need somebody to do this. I need somebody to do that. There's tremendous potential for somebody to come in and get trained at a company in many of these careers, do it for 10 or 12 years, and by the time they're 30 or 35 years old, transition to owning their own business and then employing other people. And that's a path that, again, it's not, it's not real exciting for a 17 or 18-year-old, at least most of them, to talk about, but we also know it's important for our economy. So we'd like to be able, to grow that side of the conversation as we go forward. So Lisa, again, I could talk all day and I won't. I'll be glad to answer any questions. If you'd rather deal with the questions directly, that's my contact information and you can get me anytime.
Lisa, you're muted.
You're muted, Lisa.
Sorry. We've got a little time built in so that if you would like to either put in the chat questions for Bill or unmute and ask Bill a question. I am also, while we're doing that, I'm going to pull up his website and I'm going to put it in the chat, and I would want to make sure that you've all had a chance to go and look at their website. There's a lot that's been done in a short amount of time on the website. They're building it. So one of the things that Bill and I have already talked about, and we talked about it with a small group of you, I think that was just last week. Time kind of blurs pretty quickly here, but was about doing possibly job fairs for your students, for the jobs that people are currently hiring. COVID, there may not be as much hiring immediately right now. That's something we're kind of Bill's looking at, and we've reached out to Candy at Interlink to talk to her people and see, is there a great need right now, or do we need to maybe look a little further down the road and do apprenticeship drawings in August. And so, but both of those are things that they are looking to hire people. They're also looking to build apprenticeships. It's more than just one component to this. And so, if you have thoughts and ideas and share them with us, and we're definitely happy to look at how can we go about making this happen. Also, I'm excited that this is going to be a statewide thing, but thanks to Bill being right down the street from me and being here local, and a lot of the companies that jumped on to get started on this with him are here in the Metroplex. We are going to kind of get to be the jump off point, the center of this, to get this stuff figured out, which is great for all of you and for your students. So if you have any thoughts, questions, I've got people sharing, that they're thanking you and they appreciate it. Sounded like somebody had unmuted it to speak. Is there somebody that had a question for Bill? All right. Well, and I don't know, Bill may choose to stay on for a while and kind of, see and hear what other things are going on. I think he may want to hear what's coming up from Candace and hear a little bit about how we're kind of doing some recruiting into our programs and the kind of programs we're highlighting here in our area before he goes. But I don't, he's welcome to stay with us as long as he can, but I don't know if he's able to stay with us all morning. But we really appreciate it, Bill.
I'll stay for a few minutes. Thanks very much. To be dead level honest, I'm getting ready to drive to College Station. It's my son's 21st birthday. So we're going to dinner with him tonight, but I am going to stay on for a little bit. And I really appreciate some of you have already reached out by email, and I appreciate that very much. And I look forward to working with you. I'm passionate about it. We're excited about it. It's a long race. But hopefully we can work together moving forward. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Lisa. Thank you.
Our pleasure. I'm glad we were able to kind of connect. And, and Bill said that, when we first started speaking, he's like, I don't know if there's people that are looking to do this. I'm like, I've got the audience that lives and breathes what you're selling, but having that connection on the industry side to help make it happen is, so valuable because, we can't do it alone. Just having one side of it is not enough to get us there.
Lisa,
So,
if I could add one other thing, we do have a membership level for educators in districts, and it's $100 annual, but we have a member that is willing to pay that for any school district that wants the be a part of it because we'd like to have a few school district representatives on our board. So, and you have to be a member to do that. So if you are interested in joining, I can send you a very quick 7 or 8 line application that'll put you in the loop, and then we will get your dues paid for through that sponsoring company. So that offer stands.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Bill. And if you want to send that to me when I do the follow-up email that goes out to all of those people, I can
I'll
send
do
it
that.
out to all of them. That way you don't have to one-on-one respond, send them to each person. But I'm not sure who that company is, but I appreciate them investing in our districts as being a piece of this conversation.
Excellent.
Yeah, have a safe trip down to College Station. And that's pretty impressive that your 21-year-old wants you with him at college on his 21st birthday.
As Gina would know, it's even more impressive he's still alive to have a 21st birthday. So, he survived a shark attack, a skill saw accident, and God knows what. So it's a joyous day.
That's awesome. There's quite a few of us out here who have grown kids and understand that concept. All right, I am going to let me minimize that, and I'm going to share my new computer setup takes me sometimes a minute longer to switch things around. I've got great screens now, but it complicated how things the order I have to open things up in. All right, there we go. And so I want to go ahead now, and a lot of you already know Candace, and so Candace is with Grapevine Colleyville ISD. She's also been very active with CTE, and she was the Counselor of the Year. Is that last year or the year before, Candace? And so
I think it was 2019, pre-COVID.
yeah. So, but we're very excited for her to, share a little bit. And it's not that she's the only one doing these things. She and I have been in contact. She had shared with me some of what they were doing. I thought it was a great example and a good start off point for people to talk about. And then, so we're going to let her share some information with you. And then we're also going to move to breakout rooms where you can talk in smaller groups. But we also next week are going to focus on this in a deeper dive conversation in our CTE Coffee and Conversation, looking at recruiting and planning ahead for next school year. So Candace, I'm going to mute myself and let you go ahead and take over, and I will.
All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick. If I can figure that out. Google Chrome, maybe my name is Candace McGowan, and I'm going to share, well, if I can get it to share, it's not wanting to do that right now. Okay, hopefully that will allow me to share now. Sorry about that. Here we go. So we are by no means, are y'all able to see okay, yeah. We are by no means the model for this, but we tried this year. We knew that we were going to have we weren't going to be able to bring middle school students over to our usual tours. So Jessica Locke is on this call too. She's our special population specialist, and she helped a lot with this. Our district learning management system is Canvas. And so we decided to create a virtual tour for students. And the best way to do it, to get it out to all the middle schools, was to share it through Canvas in our Commons. So we created just a 1-page Canvas course and had an interactive virtual tour. We used Genially for this, which is, we learned about it, I believe Jessica was it last week, and threw it together really quick. But It's better than a PowerPoint, and if you've got remote students, it's more interactive, so they can do a few different things. So they would log into their Canvas course and they would go through this genially. The first thing that we had in there was our virtual tour, and we had this was mostly done by students. We had a student fly a drone through the building and give a tour of the building, and student tour guides, and at each room it showed some students in action. And I'll put a link in the chat after we're done of the video, and I'll show you just a little bit if y'all can see that. I don't know if it'll play the sound for y'all, but while that's loading, I'll go through the rest. And then Jessica found, she's been recording student highlight interviews for the last 2 years. And so we included some student highlight videos on these slides for each of our career pathways. And then in the titles, she linked some interactive websites for each pathway. So the kids, if they were interested, they could go do some interactive activities or watch a student interview, because we were worried that interaction piece where the kids were on campus weren't able to talk to teachers or students. So we try to use that to cover up that piece and make it a little more interactive than usual, or than virtual, just a video. So she put those in there for each of our pathways. And then we just included a couple facts. We knew that this was going to middle school, so we try to keep it short and sweet. And some quotes. And Jessica had the great idea to use a Padlet. So kids can click on the Padlet and they can ask questions about any of the different pathways that they're interested in. And it'll populate there, and then we can go in and answer the questions for the students. And we just added some more resources for students with links, our course selection guide. And then at the end, they had an exit ticket, which is a Google form that they click on and fill out. And it's for attendance for the middle schools. And then they also put what they were most interested in, and they put what careers they're interested in after high school. So we could kind of do a little planning. We have that whole class, the whole grade for each middle school, all of their career plans and what of our pathways they're most interested in. I'm going to go back to the video and see if it will load it. There we go.
Hello and welcome to the GCISD Technology Education and Career Center, also known as the TECC. Today, we are going to give you a sneak peek of career and technical education in GCISD. So sit back and relax while we take you on a tour of possibilities. Hospitality and tourism. Does starring in the GCISD version of Junior MasterChef sound exciting, or is learning about travel and tourism on your vision board? If so, we have the place for you in the Hospitality and Tourism Career Cluster. Students in the Hospitality and Tourism program can choose from 2 paths. The Culinary Arts and Lodging and Resort Management pathways both begin with the Principles of Hospitality and Tourism class. Students can take courses to develop their culinary abilities and sit for the National Serve Safe Manager's exam, as well as have opportunities to learn from guest chefs and engage in practical experiences and upper level courses. Students in the Lodging and Resort Management path will focus on travel and tourism management and hospitality services, with opportunities to intern at local hotels and the city. Students in this program can also look forward to extracurricular activities in FCCLA, DECA, and Skills USA. Health science.
Okay, so that was the video, and I'll share a link in the chat so y'all can see the whole video. I didn't want to it's a 12-minute video, so I didn't want to play the whole thing right there. But it was edited by an AV student. The drone was flown by a robotics 2 student. Our tour guides were all students, and then the voiceovers were done by a student. And we used B-roll from previous videos and stole things off of our teachers' Twitter, because we know that the teachers have been so busy this year that creating new content would be really difficult and time consuming. So we tried to use as many resources as we could. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. I know we need to work on some of the stability issues with some of the videos. We're actually having that cleaned up this week, but it was something that we put together real quick and hopefully will be helpful to students. And they're actually, the middle schoolers are actually doing this right now. So we're getting responses in the Google form right now, and we've had about 150 students go through it in the last 2 days. We'll probably have about, I can't remember, about 1,200 students that complete this virtual tour. So if anybody has any questions, y'all feel free to send me a chat, or
I have a
and
quick
if anybody
question.
has
Carrie.
any ideas to beef it up, we're always excited to do that. We are sharing this with our high school students as well for course selection, but if anybody has any great ideas, we'd love to hear them too, because it's a struggle for us this year trying to promote classes when there's no kids in class. So if y'all have any great ideas, we'd love to hear them too.
Candace, when you say you're rolling it out to all of your middle schoolers, are you rolling it out through an English class? How are you rolling it out to them?
We put it in Canvas Commons for our district, and the middle school's counselors have chosen how they're going to roll it out with their guidance lessons. Each campus kind of does it a little differently. Some are doing it during their corral time or like their advisory period, and some are doing it through an English class, but we put it in the Commons so whoever needed it could go in there and just take it and integrate it into their Canvas course, which seems to have worked surprisingly very easily so far.
How long before your students will be doing course selection? How far ahead of that are they getting to see this?
The middle schools will start in February, so they are getting it a week ahead. Our high schools have already started. So they started last week, I think. And so this is come out this week, so it'll be for our younger high school students who are still picking their pathways.
Great. Does anybody have, you're getting a lot of congratulatory messages in chat. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask either Candace or Jessica before we go to looking at a few topic discussions and move to breakout rooms? You can go ahead and unmute if you've got something you want to ask them. All right, practicing my wait time, but it sounds like we're staying quiet. Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing. You guys did a fabulous job with this. And you know, we all know the struggles of how we're doing some of the things this year. And kind of like I mentioned before, we've always, CTE are electives. Your teachers' jobs are dependent on students choosing their courses and going into them. I mean, we've always kind of known and lived that. But there's going to be some bigger struggles with that very possibly here in the near future. We had courses that maybe didn't get offered this year that would have in the past. It's now kind of thrown a kink in some of the students' programs of study, or they were offered, but only if the students came on campus. And you may have had quite a few students that didn't come to campus that chose virtual. And so now that they may be needing to play some catch up, but we know we've been in on statewide meetings, in regional meetings, and in some district meetings that the failure rates are through the roof for our students that have been doing virtual, which is going to have kind of a little bit of a long-standing play out in if our students need to now, you know, do remediation, and it's going to eat up time in their schedule. And it doesn't eat up time and take away from their next English course or their next math course. It takes away time for their electives, which is CTE. And so, making sure students value these things and are truly interested in, and maybe hoping that students that are seniors don't take off periods and they choose to stay so they can get some courses under their belt. I like that she highlighted the IBCs, the certifications they can earn, because some of that stuff can be valuable to students who are thinking they want to go right into work after school if they know that they can get those some kind of a certification that lets them go into industry, whether it's to help support them through college or to kickstart their career at that point. Knowing that information is valuable. And I think it's great for the parents to see some of this. Bill mentioned that a lot of going into the world of trades is a perception, and it's not always a perception problem with our students. It's a perception problem with our parents. That, it has been a very long time in our country where we've been saying to be successful, you need a 4-year college degree. And that is part of what has caused such a shortage in some of these trade industries. We've got a lot of students who are coming out of 4-year degrees who are ending up needing to figure out how to get the skills they need to go into the trades because they can't get jobs in what they went and got their degree for. So, if we can help some students save a lot of time and money on what they're spending on a degree that maybe doesn't even align with what they really want to do in the end, we're helping the country, and we're certainly helping those individual families. So I like including some of those pieces into that information that's going out. I think the more times and the more places we can share that information with students, the better off everybody is. Give one last little bit of time to see if anybody has any questions as I share my screen. If you have a question for either of our ladies from Grapevine Colleyville, please go ahead and unmute. Candace has shared in the chat the link to her video, so you'll be able to pull that down and watch the whole video if you would like. All right, as we get ready to go into our breakout rooms, a couple of things. What we have run into we want to make sure that everybody that goes into a breakout room has active members in it. So I don't require when we're doing these big groups that everybody have their cameras on, but please in the breakout rooms, turn your camera on if you're able, so that it can feel a little bit more like you are visiting with your peers, because I do think that that's one of the things we're missing so much in this time. CTET coming up, they're calling them hallway conversations. And, when you go to conference, sometimes what the most I would get out of a conference didn't necessarily come from the sessions I sat into. It came from those peer collaborations that in the hallways, at lunches, in the evenings, and visiting with people. Same is probably true when you would come to the ESC for some of our bigger meetings. It's that time together and that networking. And I do feel that COVID is causing us to miss a little of that. Breakout rooms are one of the closer ways we can come to that, but if they're not actually interactive, it doesn't work. So I would ask that you please have your camera on and be participating with your group. This is not the only topics you can discuss. You are welcome to have multiple things that you want to talk about in your breakout rooms, but these are some food for thought of things I'd like you to spend a little bit of time talking through with people. Recruitment for 2020, 2021. Both face-to-face and virtual. Some of you are doing some pieces of this in some face-to-face fashions, and you're having to figure out how to do that safely. Some are just doing it virtual. Some haven't figured out how to do it at all or haven't begun doing that. And so, kind of talking through that. How are you aligning your offerings with your programs of study? So a lot of you are building out pathways because you've started to add something. Maybe you just started a pre-engineering and you've done your first course and you're going to be adding on. This is a great time to talk to your peers about how have they been expanding things. Some of my small rurals are maybe needing to offer courses every other year because of limited staff. And so that, how can you make some of that work? And then local communications. How are you working with your counselors to make sure that they truly have that CTE knowledge? And that's really, it's always important. But this year, as your students are maybe not coming and touring your programs, or you're not doing some of those showcases that you normally do that let you talk directly to the students, those counselors are the ambassadors for your program. So how are you making sure that the counselors are a part of your team and that you're working together on this? And how are you working with your special population staff to make sure that the students are supported, that they know that the students will be supported in CTE and that they are welcomed into CTE? I'm going to tell you that's a really big deal on MOA. And we will get MOAs in our region every year going forward. That is the new format. And And so, it's a matter of time until you could likely be tagged for one of those. But they're looking at all of your different special populations, and are they present in your CT programs, and are they present in an equal percentage to how they are present in your building? So if you have 60% of your high school is Hispanic, then 60% of your CTE programs should be Hispanic. If you have 20% of your high school population are ELs, then 20% of your CTE population should be ELs. It should mirror that, because that lets them know that they're coming in an equal percentage to how they are represented in the building. And CTE or TEA is looking very closely at that data. Your next round of CLNA data, you don't have to do a CLNA this spring. Everybody give out a little cheer, but you will next spring, but they are going to release the data each year. And so you'll get that data coming out very soon, and you'll be able to kind of compare it to last year's data. But it compares you against your high school as a whole, and it compares you against the state. And so you want to be looking at where do you fall in that, because that is where the data is coming from to trigger who gets those MOA visits. So I am going to go ahead and open the breakout rooms. If you want to take a picture or a screenshot of those topics to help you remember, some of the things that we talked about focusing on. And I'm going to let you move into the breakout rooms. We're going to spend 15 minutes in the breakout room. So we will come back to the main room at 11:05, because we have a CTE update and a legislative update coming from Robin. Stop share.